I'm working closely with Eric, who you know from the last meeting. We also have Hector here from our team and Rolando. And then of course we have all of the wonderful Bora players, and I will pass that off to them. If you haven't already done so, please grab some food, and please make sure that you've signed in on the sign-up sheet up front, sign-in sheet. And looks like everybody's got their name tags. We might have a few more people trickle because of the rain.
I see what you did there.
I did, yeah, that was on purpose. No, it wasn't. So anyway, I will pass it off to Steffi.
Just so that you can all remember who is talking at what point, we printed out who we are and have them all for you on the table, so feel free to just raise your hand if you have a comment. As I mentioned, I'm Steffi Knudsen. I'm with Bora Architects, and I'm the principal in charge of this project, which really just means I usually give the introduction and the end, and then the real work's done by everybody else. These are the things we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk just a minute about the objectives for this meeting. We're going to, for any of you who went on the tour of Lincoln, we're going to open up and see if there are any thoughts there. We've sent out to all of you the draft guiding principles that we've been developing from our last couple of meetings. If you weren't at those meetings, no worries. There's plenty of time to give input. We wanted to see if there were any reactions and any comments. And then we're going to give you a little 101 on the relationship between buildings and site, so that then we can frame what's going to happen after a brief break, where we're going to talk about the existing site, all the different things about it like topography and how things move, so that then we can talk about some exciting site options for how things might be organized on this beautiful site. And then you all get to think about it and give some feedback and post-it notes, and we're going to have some fun exercises, and then our consultant team from Walker Macy is here to talk about some of the existing site and orientation, and we've got our consultant team from After Bruce here who will kind of close out by talking about our outreach and engagement plan. Our objectives today are two things that we need to all get out of this meeting. One, a little bit of reactions to those draft guiding principles, and Amy will talk a little bit about those in case you haven't seen them. They're also available from the email you probably got from the bond. The second, from the site approaches that we're going to talk about today, keep in mind that at the end of this process, we're supposed to take to the school board one preferred option. So today we're going to have three options that try to be really different, and our idea is today we want to get an idea of what's working, what doesn't, what resonates, what doesn't. You're not picking one, we're just talking about how they work, and then from there we will gradually start to zoom in. So we want you to consider things about what is special or unique about this place and about this community, and we want to talk a little bit about big moves. Like, have you ever heard that story about put the big rocks in first and then you can put the smaller rocks in? Some of the big rocks on the site are things like, how do you all come to the site? Do you tend to come from Vermont or from Capital? Where should the front door be? Or, there are some options that might relocate some of the fields. What do you think about that? Or an option about the existing pool. Should that move? Exist, but maybe not in its location. So those are the things that we're going to talk about today, and our objectives is to come out of today with your feedback. Just a reminder that our work is about the physical space. So how it looks, how it feels, how the building, the physical building supports teaching and learning. Our work is not about how it operates. So things like how it's managed or what kinds of classes are offered. But there's a little bit of a back and forth, right? While we're not, this team is not dictating or having any influence on what kinds of classes are offered, we also want to design well for the kinds of classes that are offered here, and then make sure there's flexibility, because that will change over time. This is not a building for you know, 4 years from now, this is a building for 4 years from now and for the next 100 years. So your input is incredibly important to us to really understand qualitative questions like, what is the experience of this site? Or what is really unique about this place? Or what kind of culture, what should this building feel like and say with its body language? Where are we in this process? Well, first of all, we're really early. In the planning phase, which is the phase that we're in right now, we're about a third of the way through. You can see that since we were last together, we've been doing a lot of design options and information gathering. We've been just starting to get some big ideas about costs that are not quite ready yet. From here, we're going to start to refine some of those options, and then we're going to move towards a recommended option so that we can get to that board meeting with a really solid recommendation that has a really solid budget, and that there's really solid excitement about. Where are we in the bigger picture? Again, we're really early. So this is sort of, you can think of it as if we were drawing a face, and we're really just deciding some really basic things about what this face is about, and kind of, you know, some of the big pieces. After this process, there's usually a design phase that takes somewhere between 18 and 24 months. And then construction takes somewhere between 24 and 36 months. We think because this project is a new construction project, the main building construction will probably be more like the 24 months. But then there's likely to be another year where we do whatever fields are in place of where this existing building is. So, you know, that's where we're at in the whole process. And a lot of this will depend on things like what the school board does or doesn't approve, and timing for bonds, and that is not our choice to make. So, but I'm sure that we'll have more information for that eventually. All right, any questions about all of that before Amy starts with some tour debrief? And can y'all hear me okay? Yeah? Excellent. All right, great. Amy?
Well, I was at the tour of Lincoln High School on Saturday and saw a couple of you, and was really interested to hear your questions and observations. But are there others? If you raise your hand if you went on one of the tours of Lincoln High School, actually, either last Wednesday or Saturday. Great. Well, we just wanted to pause for a few minutes to hear your impressions. You know, this is obviously, Lincoln's a very different site, it's a very urban site, but it is the ed spec that we are looking to build, and so we would just love to hear any thoughts that you have or impressions. Yes?
I was really impressed about the, you know, the 6th floor structure versus the 2nd floor big box, or 2nd story big box, and how one was, maybe the 6th story one was the current seismic municipal code standard, but yet the big box, the 2nd floor, was to a more strict standard, and so therefore, you know, it could be used as a community refuge, place of shelter.
Gymnasium.
And I just thought that was fabulous, that actually the school actually has the discretion to go above and beyond what code requires. So, of course, I love, you know, the next IW Wells to have, you know, a part of that building that could, you know, perform even better than what code currently demands.
Right. Thank you. What else? Impressions? Yes.
I thought the design was great. I really had appreciation for how the library is kind of like a keystone and a showcase for public as it goes by. They can kind of see in, see the learners, and the learners can see out. And I was a little bit nervous about the mesh that was on the staircase. On the way up, that kind of gave me pause. But I really liked the gym. I thought it was a great use of space, and how they had the wrestling mats like up on a crane hoist pulley system to maximize storage. And it was really nice, like, hearing about the treatment systems and how they were very thoughtful about the HVAC and how the chemicals were treated in a system, and all of the stuff that like gave off noxious gases were on the upper floors to allow for it to ventilate more easier.
In the
So
science
it sounds like there was
labs,
a lot of very thoughtful stakeholder feedback and design. So that was nice to see that they were listening to the stakeholders in the design process.
Great, great. Anything else? Yes.
I like the fact that each of the rooms had a specific design purpose. And it looked like there was a lot of thought put into what the choir room needed, and being able to Bluetooth whatever to the performance areas for the practice areas. The different shops that are supporting the full performance art and how they're laid out. The different labs for robotics and other specific areas. I like the lunchroom and how it blends with this great room, like people often have in their homes. They're lucky enough to have that, and it looked like the flow, of course I haven't been there, it looks like someone really thought through the flow and how that would work, and the movable walls to cut it off when it's not in service. I like the use of the materials. They source things from different places. They took advantage of it, like some of the walls in the lobby are actually from Gunderson, because they had an oversupply of flooring used in the rail cars. And the other use of materials that might otherwise be considered industrial would actually provide a light and open way, and sturdy. It looks like it won't be dated for a period of time, yet not look like something out of the 70s. I like the fact that they use the odd spaces for students to gather. So the hallways aren't just corridors, but they're actually potentially meeting spaces. You can see how that could work. I like the use of the windows and how they try to take advantage of light, including having skylights. And I like the fact that there seemed to be a lot of thought between public and not so public places, which, like the library, the lobby, and so on. I thought the 6 stories was actually not a problem at all, and I heard from Eric that the students didn't think it was a problem, probably more for the adults and parents, but the school isn't for them. And I like the idea that that meant that different floors could be dedicated to different groups of different specialties, so students who might spend time in these different areas would not have to travel all over the place to get there, and yet if they go to another area, it's just the next floor down and maybe down a wing or so. I also like the fact that there were constraints on the site, and it looks like it was brilliantly used to try and deal around the fact that there's 2 streets that are platted through there, and you couldn't build on top of the services of water and sewer and so forth that you had to work around. I was taking note of the trade-offs that were made by the group that helped with that comprehensive design, and although I don't have to worry about it, but the fact that they decided to have an additional practice field instead of a few additional parking spots, I think utilization wise it's a lot better for the students. And I like the fact that there was a bike area so that students can promote biking, and there was some concern mentioned about the sound of the trains going by, but I didn't think that seemed to be a problem, and actually would add to the urban flair of the school. So it actually lean into that rather than, run away from that.
Great. A+.
Really paid attention.
Paying attention, that's great.
Can we hire you to talk about this?
Still have to talk to my agent.
Any other thoughts?
John, if you wanna put through that.
As a constructive thing, criticism, the stairwells are extremely noisy and dampen the sound on the stairwells. Even the small number of people walking down the stairs, it was impossible for me to hear. And, it was extremely loud. The 76 parking spaces was fine for Lincoln, but it would work at all in this location, given our environment where our students are coming from. The covered parking for bikes, I think is great. They ought to have electrical plugs out there as well for charging them, because if they're gonna be in the hills, they're gonna have electric bikes. And there's a provision for, there's a big generator, 2 generators, which sounds like good when you're talking about emergency, but there's no storage of water or food for the people, so the kids are gonna have to leave to go someplace else in a major quake or something like that. And that's something here we need to think about, because they're a long ways away from home, and some of them won't be able to get there. And from my understanding, the rules of the game that this district has requires people to stay on site. And particular teachers, so that isn't gonna happen, but, you know, nevertheless, there ought to be some thinking about that. And some work has been done at Robert Ray in that regard, which is useful. Martin covered all the highlights, I think, great, so thank you.
Great, yes.
Can you recap what they said? I couldn't, or what he said, I couldn't hear because of the floor cleaner passing by.
Oh.
Thank you for asking, I was
Yeah.
the same, I couldn't hear any of that.
So, let me see if I can get this. First, of the acoustics in the stairwells were tough. It was very sort of live and loud and hard, even for a small group of people to be walking up and down. I think the number of the parking at Lincoln is fine for an urban school. That number, which I think is 76, would never suffice here. Help me out, everybody. Electricity.
Bike parking, yeah.
Yeah, oh, yes, electricity for, like, the bike parking was great, covered bike parking, but maybe there would be some, electrical outlets so that students could recharge, given the fact that they are all coming, you know, through all these hills.
Side note, there are electrical
Yes,
outlets
we
in
do
bike
have
parking,
power
but,
for that reason.
yeah,
at the
great,
bike park.
but, just side note.
And,
And,
Great.
and the
Good to
emergency
see you from the sixth
response.
floor.
and the emergency response, yeah,
Thank you. Like having storage for water.
right, right, and just planning for that, in the future. Okay. Any other impressions or comments? We have actually additional, oh, they're right here. If anybody would like one of these, this is just floor plans and images of Lincoln.
There was somebody else here who wanted to share, I'm trying to put you on the spot, but you had your, I'm pointing right at you.
Me? Oh.
Right, hi Becca. No, I say my question, because it's not, it's separate from this. I didn't get to go on the computer, but, I'll hold it.
Okay.
And the person in front of you did, yes.
Oh, just one other, I love to hear from the students. My son's a junior at IW Wells, and I was talking to another parent who has a child at IW Wells, and we've heard the grapevine from our students that the Lincoln students think it's very clinical, it feels like a hospital, and so while we parents might appreciate the design choices, the aesthetics, the open floor plans, blah, 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 I'd be interested to see what the students themselves think of their environment. They probably look at it through a different lens.
Do we have any students on the tour?
I was it did not really feel like a school. Like, obviously, this building was a lot different than Lincoln was, and it felt more like an office space. It was kind of like passing by the doors. You don't have the big numbers painted above the doors and like small like type above the doors. It was very big. I'd say it's not school feel kind of.
Okay. Yes.
One thing that, having been at Lincoln a couple times, is the distribution of office spaces. So, like the counseling office is on one floor, and the college and career center is on the bottom. And from what I remember, they didn't design for the college and career center initially in the planning, and it is one of the most visited offices in our school currently. And I need to say that.
Right.
But just like considering like where and how students have to operate, like the daily kind of access to services, is something to really think about, like how, if you are a student that, if you know you have to go one more floor, will you do that? Or is that an impediment for you to try to access those services? So,
Right.
like thinking about like distribution, I know that's gonna be later on, but just like putting that on.
Right, put that on the list.
I second that.
Yeah.
Missed opportunity, cause it said student services,
Uh-huh.
but it's not.
And the other part like that was the designers had designed one of the rooms for one purpose, and the administration decided it was more important for a quite different purpose. And, you know, that was the student government who got moved off somewhere, I didn't quite understand where.
What he
But,
was noting was is that some of the spaces were designed for one purpose, and then later the administration decided to use them for another purpose.
Right. Yes.
Like that's those food access and the fact that I am big Lincoln, I would like to ask, why does the school almost intentionally feel so hostile to disabled people? It's like, not only like if you have a wheelchair, how do you really up to the sixth floor? Obviously, the answer is the elevator.
Can you repeat
But
this
why would
comment?
you need to make the school 6 stories tall for, and then just say, oh yeah, here's the solution, it's a single elevator.
It is it's very different than what we're doing here. You have much more land here on the Ida B. Wells site, and so we can sort of stretch out and use the space a little bit differently. Lincoln was really hemmed in, so it had to go, the only place for it to go was vertical. So you're right, the best solution was multiple elevators that the students
So I think
could
a good takeaway
use.
is Ida B. Wells should be a common, really welcoming
Yes.
and accessible to everybody.
Yes, absolutely. And on that note, I'm gonna move to our, yes, go
Well,
ahead.
just add one thing, and throughout the history of all the construction with all of the schools, I know that it's been noted in terms of the continual learning from things that didn't work or that were missed out or something else. And I know that some of the ed specs have been adjusted, or that, you know, just being aware of things such as the fact that the gym at Lincoln and the weight room are on the second floor. The locker rooms are on the main floor. There's no direct access from the locker rooms to the gym. You have to go into the hallways, you know, walk up the stairs with this. So whether it's halftime of a basketball game, instead of having the ability, you're out with the public, you know, going into team rooms or team room. The lack of that, and then just just a miss, right, in terms of it. So hopefully, you know, part of this whole process is to not have misses, and it's great to be last so that we know we've seen these things.
Learn all lessons. Okay, one
Yeah.
more and then we're gonna
This
move
is
on.
just a super quick question. Will there be an opportunity, especially as a number of us are staff members and have colleagues in the other spaces, to bring collegial challenges from other sites into the conversation? So things that, as Jeremy was saying, are now, as they're years into the process, really big headaches for the rank and file that we could hopefully rectify with ours.
Yes, question for, yeah, I think so.
Yes, there's definitely that opportunity.
Sure, with your.
That's all I got.
Okay, excellent.
And Eric
If
did
you-
a great job of the tour guide.
He did, I know.
Yes.
He knows. If you have anything else, please do come up to one of us and let us know after, and we will definitely sort of capture your impressions. So we sent to you in the bond email our first draft of the guiding principles for the project. And these really are our North Star for the project. So they don't yet point to how we will translate these goals into architecture, but it really starts to paint a picture of what the experience might be and what our intentions are with the project. So I'll go through these quickly. Hopefully you've had a chance to read them, but then we'd love to hear if we've got it, if we need to add anything, or anything like that.
When was this?
This was sent Friday, I think. So first we want to create a bold, flexible teaching environment that will inspire and support a variety of learning styles well into the future. And I should say that these words have come from your words and words in our conversations with our project management team with OSM. Next, to develop dynamic habitats for teachers and teenagers, supporting their social need to connect with one another as part of the path to teaching and learning success. We want to gather students, faculty, and staff in a very safe environment where they feel a sense of pride and belonging, coalescing the community within a central heart, we've heard that a number of times, while also creating a variety of those flex spaces to offer choice. Support learning with great daylighting, healthy indoor air quality, and excellent acoustics, borrowing the principles of biophilic design to achieve a welcoming environment. We want to lift the voices of a diverse student body, empowering and making visible the many cultures within the community through meaningful, equity-informed, impactful engagement. We want to lead by example by creating one of the most sustainable schools in the country, fully compliant with the PPS climate response policy, while employing simple and easily maintained systems with enduring functional spaces. Again, thinking about that long kind of horizon out front. We want to embrace the lens of disability justice to really create a school that is universally accessible, going beyond code to create a physical place of inclusion, both at the site scale and also at the building scale. Well, thank you. Better?
Is that, you want to do one more test? Is that loud enough?
Good. Okay. We want to honor the legacy of Ida B. Wells through design, art, and storytelling within the building, which you already do today, as well as on the site. And I should say that each one of these
words, the leading words in each one of these came from your description of what Ida B. Wells sort of means to this community. So we've co-opted those to really organize all of these ideas. Next, we want to connect to the broader business and residential district by making the new school a real focal point and beacon of activity in Southwest Portland, all while making sure we're preserving the safety and security of the student population. And last but not least, we want to seek input from a broad set of voices throughout the process of the design, respecting the truth of lived experience, while really elevating the most marginalized members of the community through trust-building activities. So these are 10 tenets that we want to move forward with in the project. Coming from your words, that very initial meeting that we had, we captured all of that, and we've really tried to make sure that they're part of these. And so I would love to hear from any of you. Is there something missing? How are these reading to you? Have we sort of captured it? Yes.
I would say that when we're seeking input from our marginalized communities, the best way that we're gonna build trust is actually implementing their suggestions. Because historically, it's a conversation without a follow through.
Right.
And if we're going to be creating a space that is inclusive of all of our communities, their voices need to have visible representation in that space.
Throughout.
Yep.
Yes. No, and I think that I think is maybe we should really underscore that here, throughout the design process. So I think that is a critical importance. Yes.
And just to layer on top of that, I have a question about when the actual design is going to be available for feedback. For example, to speak on top of that, I was on the North Williams Safety Committee when we were looking at realigning, working with also planning and the ARC, realigning the bike corridor, bus corridor. And that process got completely shut down when the community ended up showing up at the meeting because they had said, you know, we've had kids run over in these streets multiple times over decades, and you guys have never listened to us. And so the city allowed those community members to be part of the committee, and they're actually listened to. And so the configuration that North Williams currently has today is because those community members were listened to, and their feedback was taken into consideration, and it changed Alta's initial conceptual plan.
Yes. And today, at the end of this meeting, we have our partners from Afterbrews here who are going to walk through the engagement process that we are planning for the project, just to make sure that we can sort of respond to those questions. Because I do think that it can provide really meaningful input to the design.
And it will continue through the design.
Sorry.
Sorry, Becca, go ahead.
I was gonna say that we are sharing some preliminary ideas today, and after Bruce is gonna help move that into community. So here with you and later with more.
Okay. Any other thoughts on these? Yes.
Excuse me, sorry. So I think these are all great. I think that, I think it would be helpful if we even amplified some of the verbiage around, future thinking, forward thinking. Mainly because like it can kind of speak universally to anything, you know, whether it be the design of the building or the function of the building. I've seen little bits about like, you know, talking about the future, but really kind of stressing that like Ida B was a future forward thinker herself, like the people within the building are going to be that, and like, you know, if we're kind of referring back to this throughout the design process of like, hey, what's a goal that we should be looking towards? I think that's important, and I think also that a lot of people within the school community are concerned in one level or another that they're gonna be delivered what they already have. So I think if they know, if we put it into words, hey, we're gonna be future forward thinking governance, they'll know that we're taking into account, we've heard concerns, we've taken these things into account. We're not just delivering the same thing.
Right, yes. Okay, thank you. Yes.
If we have 10 guiding principles, we're gonna be scored on each one. And I think it'd be helpful if we knew what a 10 for each one would look like versus a 1 or 3 or 4 or 5. And also, there's gonna be a prioritization process because some are gonna conflict. And I would hope that in this phase or in the design phase, that those trade-offs are clearly identified so everyone can get out whatever they need to talk about them, and they can understand that there was a process and those things were considered, but this is what, you know, we or the next group doing the design phase ended up coming to terms with.
Right. So make sure when these intersect
Yes.
or are in opposition.
And that would
To
drive
make
the
that clear.
communication process with the community as input is gathered from them.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, I just would say transparency. Like, this process is not necessarily familiar for a lot of folks.
Mhm.
And so we need to be able to explain it in a way that is approachable for anyone in our community to understand. It isn't just like construction speak or school speak.
Right.
And being very transparent about the process and the timeline and making words available. So people don't have to feel like they're asking all sorts of questions to learn something.
Right. Yeah, it seems like the word transparency needs to land in here somewhere. Yeah. Yes.
So, I would like to see something in here about community use of facilities beyond just, oh, well, you can use a room for one night a month or whatever. And I'm talking about the theater, for example, designing it so there could be something done if the community so desired, and I'm not saying they're ready to do it at this point, but, you know, with the focus point on trying to make smaller communities in the cities to avoid people driving all over the hell, that's an important part. We got a huge facility here, we ought to be able to use it a lot more than it is now. Second, I don't think your next to last point is sufficient, because it's not connect to, it's also accommodate people moving through the campus. And I understand the safety issues, but there's a key trail east-west and a key trail north-south, and we have the farmer's market that's an extremely important part of this community, and that needs to be thought of and maintained during construction, so we don't shut it all down and say, oh, see you in 4 years. People in the community depend on that for their nutrition, and it's very important to the business community as well.
Great, thank you. I think good reminders. I'm gonna move us on. If you have other thoughts on this, please, again, let us know. We have a lot to cover tonight, including behind these boards, 3 different site design options, which we wanna get your feedback on. So I'm gonna hand this over to Corey, our sustainability director.
And just a side note, we're gonna continue to evolve these as we go through the process. So if you take some time, if you get that email and you take some time and you've got some further comments, we'd like to be able to continue to collect feedback and refine them as we keep going.
All right, thank you. Can you all hear me? All right, great. My name is Corey Squire. I am the Sustainability Director at Bora. I'll also be the Sustainability Lead on this project. I'm an architect, but my background is very much around environmental science, so anything related to energy efficiency on buildings, air quality, healthy materials, all that kind of stuff. And I'll be at speaking about these topics at various meetings. So, but today, we would get started on kind of what's most fundamental to architecture and building performance is site and building orientation. So I'll kind of just walk through this topic.
Where's the site?
So
we're moving to Arizona.
Yeah. This is actually just an example of how architecture, for as long as architecture has been around, kind of referenced its site and its context in interesting ways to gain any sort of advantages. So, fundamental, what we're trying to do is enhance learning outcomes. It's important for a school, and we know that daylight is essential for learning outcomes. We know that kind of connection to nature, and all these kind of interactions between the building and the outdoors and the students will have real measurable impact. We also want to think about energy and operating costs. We want to think about carbon emissions, as was referenced in kind of the climate response plan. So at the very beginning of a project, how do we set up a building to respond to these issues? So the concept of building orientation is the relationship between a building and a site. And I just have kind of 4 random block buildings, and you see the site is in one given place. And depending on how the building is oriented, it responds very differently. Site typography is one reason that you might orient the building a certain way. Maybe there are views that you want to respond to, and that can impact the building orientation. And the sun. And the sun is probably the most important the most important factor for building orientation. Responding to the path of the sun, and that will impact building efficiency, carbon emissions, system operating costs, even upfront costs on buildings related to mechanical systems, human comfort, resilience. If power goes down or there's an emergency situation, the orientation of the building will have a big impact on how comfortable and livable the school remains. And then, of course, occupant experience. Yes.
If you're on this side of the room, can you see this side of the screen?
Am I blocking it? Is that?
If I stood in the back, it was not too much, but
Okay.
a few inches.
We forgot the clicker, so I'm gonna have to go back and forth.
Or just tilted a little bit, but when
Yes.
I was in the back, it was seemed.
You couldn't see it? Okay. I'm gonna do my best to steer clear of the screen. But just to emphasize this point, so on the south, the sun tends to stay high in the sky, and we can control southern sun. But on the west, or on the east, but in the east it's usually cloudy in the morning. On the west, the sun is a low angle, and we can't control that, right? And that results in heat gain, high thermal discomfort, or high energy use, and also potentially glare. So we're introducing this idea of good light, which kind of provides daylit spaces, and bad light, which could shine directly into the eyes of the occupants, right? And you have a situation like this. So we know that this building has these western facing surfaces, the blinds are closed, because at some point there's kind of significant glare in the afternoon. So buildings can be designed in a lot of different ways, right? And in a lot of modernist buildings, like this example over on the right, kind of don't respond to the site, right? We call that responding kind of with disregard to nature. You might have glass curtain walls, you might have the same treatment on all sides, even though the sun is different on all sides. And in contrast to that is this idea of design with nature, right? This is a western facade, targeted glazing, deep overhang to protect those windows from the sun. For here, you can see some southern glazing, and that's where you have excellent daylighting for classrooms, right? And then we mentioned some of the negatives that come from orienting a building in the wrong way. There are a lot of context, a lot of fundamental physical constraints on a project like this, and one of them is the fact that the sun rises in the east, right? Not a new idea, and sets in the west. And we know exactly where the sun is going to be in every moment of every day. We can put that with a class schedule. We can put that in the year schedule and say, like, on this day at this time, the sun will be here. How is the building responding to that? So this is what we want to avoid. We don't want to solve glare with blinds because they tend to go down and stay down, and then we lose the benefits of great daylighting. And just to show a few examples, here's some Bora projects, how we've dealt with daylighting in the past. Faceted window to kind of get a better orientation in a tough situation. These are north-facing glazing. There's very soft light in the north, so you can have more glass and have kind of great views. Great daylight, also great views. And then in certain situations, we can provide targeted shade structure to make sure that we protect whatever glass is going to be maybe not in the best situation. So here's the overview from the site perspective. This will lead into kind of some of our schemes. This is the sun on the fall equinox, so September 21st at 4 p.m. This is what we're trying to avoid. And what you'll see when you look at these schemes that we put together, this is the context that we were taking into account. We want to make sure that we're laying out good options. They're different options, but they're good options from the context of energy efficiency, human experience, health, resilience, and all this impacts learning outcomes. So that's all I had. We're not doing specific questions, but this is going to feed into the next exercise.
Thanks. I mean, if there are any specific questions, go ahead. Otherwise, we'll start talking about the site.
Yes, if you had any, then please. All right. Thank you.
All right. Am I still on? Yeah. There we go. All right. And I will also try to not stand in anyone's way. Hi, everyone. I am Chelsea McCann. I am a landscape architect with Walker Macy. So we're here to help talk about the site and kind of all of the site aspects. So we're going to start here with a little bit of site analysis and talking about some things that probably you all know very, very well because you know this school. So of course, here we are at Ida B. Wells. We have Capitol Highway to the north and Vermont to the south. Today, Vermont is the main entry, but I think from a practical standpoint, a lot of us and a lot of people actually arrive off of Capitol Highway. So that is a main route in. that we all have to think about. In addition to that, for those who bus to school, that is where the majority of the bus routes are. So you are seeing a lot of flow coming in and out on that side.
Except the yellow school buses, they come in on Vermont.
Except for the yellow school buses, thank you. They do come in on Vermont. So there are gonna be some considerations as we organize the site, and as we talk through different concepts in a little bit here. We'll love to hear your thoughts about how to orient the school and kind of how to weight the main entry and how to think about different people coming in from different perspectives. It was already brought up today that there are some main Southwest Trails routes that go through the site. We have the north-south, if you can see it in green dashed, the north-south path is along the parking lot between Ida B. Wells and Reiki. And then we also have the east-west pathway which runs along Vermont. And so all of our concepts will need to maintain those trails. Yeah, you had a question.
No, that's not right.
Oh, okay.
The east-west trail goes along the north side.
From Burlington?
No, it goes along the north side of the parking lot.
This parking lot.
The north
This-
side of the parking lot,
Oh,
that's the trail.
Yeah.
That's where.
Okay, and second, the trail that goes between Wilson and Ricky, the regional trail, it's not just a trail or a
Yes.
pathway. It's
Right.
gonna be signed as the Hilo Trail coming up soon.
Okay, great. Well, those are things that we definitely want to make sure we're getting right.
There's a second pedestrian improvement that you really need to focus on, and that's going from Vermont across by the pool to the north side. It goes across the end of the play field, the football field. That
cutting
is
through this side.
second one, that's very important to a lot of people.
To get to the pool, is
No,
that,
to
is
get
that
to
the
the
destination?
shopping center.
Okay, all right.
Sorry, just real quick, I just wanna second that, that's my daily commute, that's the daily commute of a lot of people to get to, well, the shopping center or the transit route to get from Chestnut, through the pool, through the kind of track area, and then over. I think it's a very common pedestrian
Trying to
walking route
be-
that I would really like to see preserved.
We've got some snow pictures that shows how busy it is, even during the snowstorm.
Okay, I'm gonna be honest, both our paths from one road to another are almost intentionally designed to not be very nice for cars. Considering that there's, like, half the time you try to go up the north path that's not near Reiki, there's just a 50% chance that there's gonna be a chain that's almost invisible and it's gonna hit your car if you don't notice it. That's blocking the way and showing up your sure it's there. And for the Reiki one, if the parking lot's filled, you're not going down that road because these speed bumps are gonna kill your vehicle.
Good to know. And I think these are all gonna be things that we're gonna be needing to explore as we look through the different concepts, because we are gonna be looking at how things might have to change a little bit. Oops, sorry, wrong direction. So here is an aerial view of what is here today. As we look at the different concepts, did I turn this off?
No, that's okay, I'm like, oh, battery, let's see here. Testing.
Oh, there you go, you're back. I don't, could just be my clumsiness. I'll just, my backup plan is to just be loud. So this is an aerial plan of the site, and it highlights a lot of the main components that we are going to be looking at in these different concepts that have to be fit. And a lot of them are very large, so we're going to be looking at the baseball field. You have also a multi-purpose field in the stadium, parking needs, as well as other kinds of support, like the student garden areas and things like that. We've also been hearing that, well, I should say, it is a beautiful site with a lot of wonderful trees around the main building, that many of which may be impacted, which you will see some of that through the concept today. But we have understood that there, particularly two main trees have been brought up. One is the beach, the large beach that's on Vermont, as a spot where that students are very or folks like to hang out under, and is an important tree, as well as another tree that is on the north side of the property. So you will see when we go into concepts, we have paid particular attention to those two trees. It does not mean we might not preserve others on site, but those two we've spent a lot of time to really make sure we're working around. When we look at the site, there is topography. This is slopes. So this is a very steep site with a lot of what, I apologize for using a little bit of terminology, we call it grade change, and that is the vertical elevations, you know, kind of how high it is or low it is at different points in sight. Did this just go out again?
Yeah, just go loud.
All right, we're gonna go with loud.
Sorry.
We'll go for
Sorry.
loud.
That's all right, I like loud. So the school itself is on the highest part of the site. These numbers indicate a 1 foot in drop in elevation. So we're saying the school at 560 is 25 feet higher than your baseball field and the stadium, more or less. So that is a lot of grade change that has to be navigated. So all of our concepts have to think about how we work with that on the site and how any new design here accommodates circulation, people being able to move through the site in a way that is comfortable and accessible. And this is going to be a challenging site to work through to make sure we can make that happen. We also are going to be thinking about connections to Riki because the elevation change from the baseball fields and the stadium to Riki is about 35 feet difference. So that is a huge amount of vertical change that we have to make sure is accommodated. So these are all just challenges that are going to be coming up and we're going to be working through in the design. And there we go.
One more point I think you ought to be aware of, and that is the groundwater is a serious issue on the slopes going to Riki and also some degree along Vermont.
Okay. For those of you who couldn't hear, he was talking about just paying attention to the serious issue of groundwater.
I forgot to mention, on the tour of Lincoln, I had asked if there were any cisterns or water retention or gray water, or thinking of like zero use, or is it zero?
Net zero?
Zero waste, yeah,
Net
net zero
zero.
waste. And so that's when Eric shared with us that they only have the neutralization tank for the chemicals in the labs up on the 6th floor. So given our site and its proximity and feeder to Cano Creek and the flooding that's currently traditionally here in Portland, because we paved over everything, is that a consideration for the design, is retaining any of the water on site or diverting it, since we'll probably be building into the hillside given the topography of the site?
Yeah, excuse me, I should say at the stage that we're at this early stage, we haven't quite gotten into that level of detail, but those are those sort of things that are really helpful for you to be bringing up this early. So as we do get a little further down the line, we can think about what can be done and how that could be accommodated on the site, because those sorts of facilities do take up space. So we have to think about that early to make sure it could happen. So thank you.
Just real quickly, is there a requirement that the amount of impervious surface area not be exceeded with this next design, or is there flexibility there?
There may be some flexibility. We'll have to work with our engineering team, but regardless, all of these changes that we're making, potentially changing to things like if we have synthetic fields, those sort of things, they do change how the stormwater kind of gets absorbed or moves across the site, and we will have to provide stormwater retention and treatment and those sorts of facilities in the design, which you don't see today because this was built at a different time when the rules were a little bit different.
Okay, so we are going to talk about some ideas that we've been working on together in collaboration with Walker Macy. I'm Amelie with Bora. So to start, here's a picture of the campus again, another site plan of the campus. We're highlighting the existing school footprint, and that's really important to look at this phase in the design, because we know that the school is going to remain operational during construction of the campus. So as we've been looking at options for the site, we know that we have to build west of the building. So the three ideas that we've been developing all look at different options for the building west of the existing footprint, and they all vary in terms of how much of the site is changing. So for example, whether or not the existing sports fields stay in their current locations, whether or not the swimming pool stays in its current location or moves somewhere else on the site. There's a number of different configurations, and as Steffi said earlier, we're trying to show you a broad range of differences so that we can really start to solicit some reactions and some feedback on what's terrible or what's great. So there's a wide range of options within the three in terms of where all of these site rocks are going. And they're very conceptual still. You know, some of the things that we really need to start to nail down are where the football field will be, for example. But it is still very conceptual. So we're at that early no features on the face stage of the process. Drawing from the site analysis and the great feedback that we got from you and some of the Ida B. Wells discussions and our guiding principles, we're starting to look at some really inspiring ideas and philosophies that can really start to inform the building as well as the site. And so depending on the site option, depending on where the big rocks are going on the site, there are different opportunities for this building. So we're not doing the architecture yet necessarily, but there are some big ideas that are already starting to generate from this thinking. So the first option is an option that puts the building footprint between the existing sports fields. This is the building footprint, the proposed new school. So we would place it between the existing sports fields and west of the existing school. So there's the existing school footprint for reference. So we're really trying to make a light touch on the site with this option. This is a lower intervention in terms of site work. It's a smaller footprint. It's a compact footprint that has an internal courtyard. Because it's a little bit more compact than the other schemes that you'll see, it's actually a 4-story scheme in some places. And in that case, it actually allows for really great views. It's a slightly taller option than some of the others. To go through, so a quick recap on what we're keeping in terms of fields in their same position. We're keeping the existing track and field in its current location with improvements. We're keeping the existing pool at where it is, and I'll go into more detail about that in the next slide. Keeping the existing baseball field where it is, and then the fields that are adjacent to the Reiki campus, or the Reiki school, elementary school, will stay there in all of these schemes, and some improvements to the softball field.
Red, what's the red, is that the entrance?
Yeah, the red arrow is the entrance. Yeah, so here are some kind of high level notes just to orient everyone. So like I said, this is a more compact idea. So it's a 4-story building that fits between the existing school and the fields. There's an internal courtyard that's kind of a result of creating a more compact footprint that way. That's one way of bringing light and air into the spaces and creating a central gathering space. This keeps the existing baseball and softball fields with improvements. It keeps the existing track and field with improvements. It keeps the existing pool. In all of these options, we're going to need to add a pool support building. So a building that has new bathrooms, mechanical equipment, everything that a pool will need, because those services, as you all know, are currently in this building. New tennis and pickleball courts. Was that your question?
No, but I'm glad that you asked
Yeah.
that. So I'm not super familiar with construction. So putting it right next to where the baseball field is, the baseball field is at a lower point than the current field.
Yes.
So does this sit up higher, or does that get leveled?
Yeah, so it actually does sit up a little higher, and these are cross sections. So just below the plans that we're looking at, there are some cross sections showing you a very conceptual diagram of what this idea would look like. There would be a lot of grading, manipulation, and perfection that would happen with this idea, but yes, a little bit. So that's a good observation.
Random question, but
Yes.
since the pool is operated by Parks and Rec, do they have the responsibility to assist in constructing new building spaces that would allow for that pool to remain?
That is a great question, and do we
That's
want to wait?
unknown at this time, but I know that district leadership they have an ongoing conversation with Parks about all of their facilities that the district is using at other schools, and so definitely the pool is kind of on the list about what, if there's a plan to move it, how do we do that?
Yeah.
What's the operations look like? Does it change?
And that's where my question is,
Yeah.
who then is responsible for the maintenance of the places, like dressing facilities, bathrooms?
That
Those
still
those
remains,
are
but yes, but those are good questions, because right now the pool utilizes Ida B. Wells structure, and we know that if the structure goes away, then something has to be reconfigured, even if the pool, stays there or moves to another spot.
If you look at the parks budget, there's not a lot of money there.
They would probably look to the district to cover all the costs, so, but we'll see.
Just a quick follow-up, as far as roles and responsibilities, does Portland Public Schools get to dictate, to, Portland Parks, Department, where the school goes, or what is the relationship between parks and the school? Yeah.
Well,
Do we get to dictate to parks?
the relationship is complicated, because parks, allows a lot of district use of parks facilities. And so there's a balance, of course, that parks needs to make with the greater community and not just PPS. We can't dictate to them, we negotiate and come to consensus. And so, that's where it's, there are conversations that need to be had, and we don't know where that would go yet, right now. Yeah.
So, is the pool actually deeded to the city of Portland Park Bureau, owned by them, and then surrounded by PPS deeded property?
I believe it's still district property, but the facility itself is operated by parks.
And owned by them.
So there's an MOU.
So I think there's, there are intergovernmental agreements between the district and parks about the operations of that.
Okay.
I believe that we own the land and it's their facility, and so, but that could change if we're making alterations. So we're gonna have to revisit those agreements with parks.
Okay, we're gonna keep going. We have two more options to go through and a little bit more imagery on this one. So, and just so you know, after this presentation, we'll be handing out handouts with each of these plans. So everyone's gonna be able to look at them super close. I know the screen's a little bit small. And then we'll have a feedback exercise where they flip around on these boards and you can ask us additional questions during that time. So this is just the clean plan. I don't think I talked about everything. So tennis and pickleball courts will be new and relocated. There will be a relocated and new multi-use field. And then we're pointing out the main entry. So the main entry in this scheme is clearly off of Vermont. There's a new parking lot at the southeast corner of the site here, and a improved new parking lot at the north side. There is not a vehicular connection on the east side of the site. Do you want to add anything?
Well, I can bounce over to the next slide. So one of the benefits of this particular option is because it has such a compact footprint, it does leave us with a little more site area to play with. So in this case, it is organized with the idea would be that it would have a very clean north-south and east-west access way through the site that helps to connect some of these site amenities as students and others are able to navigate the site. This concept does include a newer, larger parking lot on the south side off of Vermont that has a drop-off and is built to current standards. And at the north, the parking lot, there would still be some on-street, I guess if you will, parking, as similar to what exists today, although of course to current code, with a smaller parking lot that allows some additional drop-off and would provide quicker access, say in the summertime, to the pool or to access the pickleball courts. So each of these schemes, you will see a little bit of rebalancing of how parking works and how some of the site circulation works. In addition to that, we do have the multi-use field would be in this case relocated over to the northeast corner. That is currently the field that is right here, that is right now going to be underneath the building. And then some other just sort of adjustments to make sure we have things like the teaching garden and some flexible space on site. There was a question.
It's going to be very hard to just take the garden and move it somewhere else.
Yes, it will be a process to be able to relocate that garden and something that would have to be worked through.
I do have to ask, because I'm not really knowledgeable on this, but I have
Can you speak up a little, please?
Does anyone here actually use that court currently? No,
The which?
not that one, other people use that one, but the other court that you're trying to move this one.
The multi-use field?
Yeah,
Okay.
I've never
Yes.
Yes,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
used extensively.
All the time, all the time.
Football program practices on it every day.
And it's part of the ed specification, so there is one at most schools.
I think you were.
Right now, there's 240 parking spaces around the whole thing. I'd appreciate having for each of these alternatives, how many there are. As a neighbor, that's extremely important to us.
Yes.
And the bus service in Southwest is decreasing as opposed to increasing. The change they just made reduced the number of houses within a quarter mile of a bus by 7%.
So, sorry, I just wanna, one note is that we're gonna have a bunch of time to make a lot of comments. We wanna make sure we write these comments on Post-its and put them on the board. So it's not that I wanna shut down questions and comments, but I really wanna make sure that we have time to get through them and then put them all on boards and be able to do them that way.
Right.
So if you have a question about it and don't understand it, please ask it. But otherwise, if you've got comments, write them down on those Post-it notes right now, and then we're gonna put them on the boards. If I could ask a favor.
I'm holding my comment, I just have a question.
Yeah.
As far as parking goes, and I think this will be relevant to all the schemes we look at, is it a desire to make sure there's not a cut through on the east side, or is it a thing that's happening because there's no room? Is that the goal?
I think it's both, actually. We talked a lot as a team about that, the advantages of having that currently, and I think it was sort of a mixed reviews on it, but I think it seems advantageous from a site circulation standpoint to not have that pass through, also from a security standpoint. So we'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
We did hear a lot of feedback just about how dangerous it is with like cars speeding through there and the conflicts with pedestrians, and so that was definitely a big reason why we're not showing that.
But if you think it should be, write it on a Post-it note.
Yeah, and then, but space is also a factor. As you can see, we've got, and this is the option with the most site.
And to the earlier comment, we do not currently have the exact parking counts because we're still moving things around. The intention of the design is try to get very close to, if not equal to, it would be ideal, the same number of spots that are there today. However, it does have to be brought up to current code, which means that there's gonna be more planting, more things like that within the parking, which makes for much nicer parking. But does take up a little more space, so there is always a balance there and a push-pull to make sure we can fit all of the programmatic things, the elements that are needed for the school, as well as parking.
Okay, so this is a very conceptual, three-dimensional view of an aerial view of this option, looking like as if you were hovering on the southwest of the site. So this is Vermont Street here. Here's the football field and track and field and its current location. And this is a very rough massing of what this type of site would afford in terms of the building opportunity. And some images on the right, just kind of thinking about courtyard spaces and the advantages of having a fully enclosed internal courtyard in the building. It's secure, it's a really great place for gathering. And then an image of a slightly taller building. That one's a little taller than what this one would be, but about 4 stories, so a taller-ish building than the options that we'll look at in a minute. So the second option is what we're calling lift. So this option puts the building location on the southwest corner of the site. And as you've seen in the site section, there's a little bit of grade change or elevation change, topography on that part of the site. So we're seeing this as an opportunity to really make the building form sort of lift up with that topography and create courtyards at different levels, very accessible to one another and to the building itself, but also opportunities to sort of lift up aspects of the school itself, metaphorically and literally. So it keeps the track and field, real quickly, here's the existing school footprint for reference, just to orient everyone. It keeps the existing track and field in the same position. This option might consider moving the grandstand to the south side so that it's not the first thing you see as you approach from Capitol Highway. There is space to do that in this scheme. It keeps the existing pool in its current location with that added pool support building. It moves the baseball field to the northeast corner of the site. And my cheat sheet, so as I said, the building form might have opportunities to step up with the topography in this option. The softball field would be improved in this scheme, as it would in all of the schemes actually. Moving the grandstand to the south of the field potentially keeping the existing track and field with improvements, keeping the existing pool, a new baseball field and multi-use field on the east side of the site, new tennis and pickleball courts, more kind of centrally located and very proximal to the pool. And then the main entry also visible from and accessed off of Vermont Street, but a little bit more central on the site. And parking approximately in the same positions. Do you wanna, take it from there?
Yeah, so, for this concept then, yes, the parking is somewhat similar. So you have a larger lot than in the southeast with a smaller, collection of parking and ability to drop off and turn around at the north. One of the things about this from a site standpoint is this effectively kind of pushes all of those athletic and, type facilities kind of all together more toward the north side of the site. And then retains, courtyard space and kind of student gathering right in the middle, adjacent to the building. So it sort of organizes kind of all of those together, whereas the last scheme had things kind of spread apart a little bit more. I think that's probably good for now, and we can move on to the next.
And then this is a 3D view of that one from the same position, southwest corner aerial view, and then some images of projects that sort of take advantage of changing topography and might step up their form a little bit, or create outdoor spaces that are dynamic in their level changes. Yeah.
With the topography, like using that, do you have an idea what, like how many stories it would be?
Yes.
Or like what its highest point?
Yes, so this is showing about 3.5 stories. It would never appear as more than 3 above the ground, right? But there might be kind of some half levels that are sort of tucked into the earth and things like that, and that's kind of why you see the stepping. Yeah.
Because this building seems a lot more, since this building seems a lot more girthy than the previous one, would there be any rooms that just are in the center and have no windows?
It's a really great question, and ideally no. So as we continue to articulate these massings, I mean there might be some, but we have a clean slate here, so we're going to try to minimize those rooms and really allow for rooms to be on the perimeter, and in particular classrooms, as Corey kind of talked about in his orientation presentation, to be located on the north and on the south, so that the light entering those rooms is ideal for learning. All of these schemes take that thinking into account.
There are some spaces that don't want windows, like the theater.
Right.
Generally does not want windows. So there's some places where we actually really want to be able to do it. Restrooms.
Yeah.
Generally no windows. Maybe light, but not windows. So, you know, we can try and be really smart. But counseling offices, we'd really like them to have windows, for example, not like what ended up being the result of how things worked at Lincoln.
Yeah. All right, I'll move on to number 3. So this scheme is the third scheme. So this one is the largest intervention in terms of how much we're moving on the site. And so this was kind of a wipe it clean, what does the site want? And this is what we're proposing. So the track and field in this position is moved north-south orientation. I'm hearing some excitement over here.
We have an east-west field,
I know.
so we get beautiful views, but
Yep.
you get sun in your face
Yes.
when you're trying to play sports.
Yeah, so here we go. So we know that this is optimal. We're also excited about this field position because, as Chelsea noted, this is about 20 to 25 feet lower than what we're showing as the main level of this building configuration. So you would actually see across the field, and you have really great views to the west, kind of from that courtyard space that we're showing. The building's a little bit higher. You can see here in the section that demonstrated.
The fans look into the sun.
Yeah, fans get beautiful sunsets.
But they get to see the sunset, yeah.
I mean, the baseball field is also on the northwest side here. I'll just kind of show you for reference where the existing building is, and then in terms of fields, we're really only kind of keeping and maintaining the fields adjacent to Reiki in the scheme, and then everything else is kind of shifted around. So to kind of walk around the site, the main entry again is visible from Vermont. One interesting thing about this scheme is that it's the only scheme where the building form actually kind of stretches in the north-south direction and has a great opportunity to also be very prominent from the north from the Capitol Highway entrance as well. So there's a large parking lot on the north, a largish parking lot at the main entry on the southeast. The pool is now located on the southeast corner. And so we took the pool and the pickleball and tennis courts and located them on that southeast corner, very accessible from Vermont. And then the multi-use field is between the baseball field and the pickleball courts. This building results in a 3-story scheme, so it's a little bit more spread out, not as tall as the 4-story option. That's a little bit more compact. And then, as I was noting about the kind of the prominence and the visibility from the north, there's also an opportunity for a pedestrian plaza, and kind of improving the experience as you arrive on foot from Capitol Highway. And let Chelsea kind of talk a little bit about it as well.
Yeah, so you touched on, Emily touched on it just real quickly, but this one does split the parking a little bit differently. So the larger of the 2 lots is gonna be at the north and with a smaller-ish one toward the south, but they are a little more balanced. So as opposed to very big and very small, they're a little more even. One of the other things that is interesting from a site standpoint is by relocating the pool and the tennis pickleball kind of out of the middle of the site where they sit today, it frees us up to create some more opportunity for outdoor spaces that could be used for students, that can be used for outdoor classrooms, and kind of a more contiguous space that could be designed for lots of opportunities. And then again, the baseball and multi-use field were relocated similar to the second concept.
What is the cost differential between each of these options and how that budget would impact things that would be accessible to students?
And
Like
time.
if the field's moving and the pools are not cheap, and neither is that field.
So an outdoor pool like the one that we have is not nearly as expensive as if the pool gets improved. We don't have full costs yet, but what we do know is that the vast majority of the cost of the project is the building. All of the site work is much less, and the cost difference between all of these schemes is not great. It's not that it's nothing, it's that it at this point of development is relatively small, like 2-3% kind of range.
So it would be drastically altered depending on what bond was approved.
Well, this process is setting the recommended budget. Obviously, we all want to be stewards of public dollars. We're all voters. We all care. But, you know, in the big scheme of things, you know, I think one of our questions is, what do we think is the right thing for the project? Then we can make some choices about whether or not it's worth the money. But one of the reasons we even looked at this was so that we could get some ideas about, well, what would that cost? Do we think that's a good idea? Might be that we don't, but if we don't look, we'd never know. And someone's gonna ask that question in the future, so we might as well look at it now. Is there anything, oh, I was gonna say, Eric or Donna, is there anything you all wanna add about that?
No, I think that's pretty good. I mean, we're really just wanting to study all the options of what we can do on site, and then when we come back, we'll have actual sort of rough cost looks at these, yeah.
Just as a student, I wanted to say thank you for adding I guess it'd be the capital entryway, because no matter which one is chosen, we have like so many people coming in that way, and really easy access to the school from there is like kind of a necessity at this point.
8,000 people use the bus on Capitol Highway per day. Something like that. Maybe that's per week. I think it's probably per week, but it's a huge number. It's the largest bus stop in the Southwest Portland.
I actually looked it up. It's 4,000 weekly riders, which is the largest of anywhere except for Central City or 82nd. So it's a huge bus stop. Its access is just critical.
I would echo that. Even though the design that I like uses that for the east, I hope we keep incorporating more of the access from the north, which is a business district, and minimize the impact on the neighbors to the east and the south, because I'm seeing a lot of maybe traffic focus there, and that's where people are living, and this is where people are coming via public transit.
Great.
It looks like all 3 sites allow students to stay in the existing existing building when
Yes.
we construct? And that's intentional, has that decision sort of been made that that's the goal, okay? And then in parking, I'm just curious, do the ed specs require a certain amount of parking and then separately, does our climate action plan look for ways to restrict that parking, and is there a conflict there at all?
Eric or Donna, can you address if the ed spec actually addresses parking? And then Corey is our climate policy, or climate response policy expert. After Eric answers, can you?
Sure. The ed specs do not require any parking, and I'm not sure where we are in this zone, but most of the zoning rules also don't require us to build parking. At the same time, the district wants to provide some parking for staff at a minimum, and so, you know, that's what we're looking at here. But as far as balancing kind of the climate action policy that the district has, I mean, we're having ongoing conversations about that. We do know that we would have significant amount of bike parking and covered bike parking to, you know, encourage the use of bikes, but that.
And e-bikes?
Yes, and e-bikes and providing power for that. So there isn't a requirement, so there's an inherent conflict with that, but still it's an important conversation to have.
And then touching on the PPS climate action plan, there are goals to limit the use of single occupancy vehicles for access to schools. There are provisions in the plan to emphasize access from transportation sites, to provide adequate bike parking, to provide charging for bicycles, as was mentioned earlier. There's not a specific parking lot count there as well, but it is, it does take the position that from a carbon emission standpoint, the school district needs to cut its current emissions in half by 2030, and then by 2050 be net zero, and that includes vehicles operated by the school district and transportation to and from the school district.
It'd be an interesting conversation for this group to have. I mean, we're different than Lincoln, and staff parking is one thing separate. I'm thinking student parking is it's an interesting question of how much, if any, we should provide, given our climate goals.
We'll have a lot of opportunities to talk about the climate action plan as well during this process.
I think when we don't provide it, and I agree, like long term, we need to think of other solutions, but what happens now is the students just park in the neighborhood if there's no parking.
And the parking.
You had your hand up.
I just wanted to ask, just along these lines, is the first option to have the smaller footprint, this is a very didactic question, would that be more sustainable and emit, like have a smaller carbon footprint as well? Because the buildings takes up less space?
It's a really
I
good
can
question.
touch on that.
Yeah.
I would say that at the level of development of the sites right now, similar to costs, there's very small differences between these schemes. A lot of this has to do with how the program and the kind of the elements of building are laid out within these schemes. So for instance, we're looking at a scheme that's more of a north-south orientation, which is typically considered less desirable from an energy data standpoint, but that will be dependent on how the classrooms are actually laid out. So even though the scheme is north-south, the classrooms should be laid out facing, even though the scheme is north-south, the classroom would be facing north and south rather than east and west. And so those larger facades would have to have less light. As we, in this process, narrow down schemes, we're gonna be bringing more information on building performance. So right now we have 3, we're gonna narrow down to 2, and when we have to, I'll also present, kind of high-level energy use and carbon emission scenarios for the 2, which will be part of the consideration for moving down to the
Thank you, Corey. One last comment on this one, and then we can go to our summary page and get everyone starting to think on these and reflect on them. So connect, great opportunities to kind of connect north-south across the site. There's also a really great opportunity in this particular configuration to connect east-west through this little knuckle that you see in the middle of the U shape. So a space like that would be really great, you know, adjacent to a courtyard. It could have access to the outdoors, have really great connections and views and et cetera. So in summary, we already touched on cost a little bit, but we wanted to put the 3 of these up here side side by side so that we can really kind of look at them in terms of the level of site intervention that they require, that they include. And all of these points that you're seeing here, we've already gone through. They'll also be, we'll keep this up here, they'll also be on the boards, which we should go ahead and turn around. Yeah.
Okay.
So-
Sydney, I want just one question. The north grandstands for the track and field and the pool, where are they in their overall life anyhow? Are they, because there's flaking concrete, there's potential leaks, so is it, are we thinking that we might have to do extensive work just to have them up or seismically? I mean, is it gonna be great loss if they were just removed?
I think that we have to replace the grandstands in
Regardless.
general. On almost every other project we've had to for a number of reasons. I don't think we've done an assessment of these, but generally speaking, that is what we do. So, you know, we have the opportunity, if we're gonna replace them, to say, well, should we replace them in the same place?
Yeah, that's,
Right.
I guess that's the whole point.
Right,
Pool was
right.
completely renovated a couple times in the last.
Yes.
Can you speak real quickly to, or can you define securable perimeter? Is the idea that at all times that would be, anything inside of that would be closed to the community, or what does that
I
look
think
like?
the idea is that during the school day, that because of safety and security, which we're all very well aware of, that is closed down. So Lincoln, for example, Lincoln High School closes the fence once the school day starts. And then it is open at other times, outside of school hours for the community.
Gotcha, so the red dashes are only when school is operating, which is ostensibly the same as already happens. You're not supposed to be in the school area if you're part of the community when school is operating.
Right, and we've shown a couple of different options. I think this is a conversation that is ongoing, certainly, but the red dash line that you're seeing are suggestions for how we might secure the perimeter of the school, yes. Okay, so we want to get some feedback from you. You all have your own printouts, so you can really come through, but we want to ask a couple of questions. And what we want you to do is, for the next 10 minutes, just a bit of self-reflection, and on a series of Post-it notes, for each site option, what do you think is successful about that option? What is your favorite aspect? And what is not successful? So we're asking you these broader questions because what we don't necessarily want you to do is say, my favorite option is number 2. There are different aspects of each site each site option that may be great to you. And often what we find is through these processes that we are able to take what is really good from a couple of different options and bring them together with one. So focus most definitely on what you think is successful for each scheme, and then we're gonna take a few minutes to post those to each one of the boards. You can split into 2 sort of bigger groups when you do that, and then we'll come back and summarize what we're hearing and some of the common themes.
And maybe with that, my name is Rhonda, and I'm with the After Bruce team, which is Engaged for Community Engagement. I'm a project manager and a community engagement coordinator. I do want to flag, I just have some notes, you'll see me popping up and down onto my phone. And then the slides that you're about to see have a lot of words, it's kind of small font. If you can't see it, no problem, these slides are going to be available and posted on the project website. So, After Bruce, we are an Asian-owned, or Asian, queer, and woman-owned communications and engagement firm based in Portland, Oregon. Our work centers in communities most impacted to achieve long-term and sustainable outcomes. So with our community engagement, we really want to acknowledge that folks' lived experience is their expertise. Their day-to-day lives, your day-to-day lives, your experience with this school is what makes you an expert and why we want to talk to you and communicate with you. And just like this slide does say, we want our work in community to be specific, responsive, and impactful. And relational is a really big part of what we do, so it's not just we're grabbing the information and running, we really want it to be a back and forth open communication avenue. So with that open communication is our feedback loop, something to kind of help visualize all the different groups that are a part of this. We have the CPC, After Bruce, the design team, community-based organizations, CBO, I might use that phrase coming around. And essentially, we are here to help facilitate that information so that everyone gets to hear what other groups are saying, make sure the design team knows everything that we are learning, Throughout this process, we want to help facilitate effective communication. We want to communicate with community members to identify their needs and priorities. And we want to provide information to folks who maybe need assistance or extra access and alternative forms to participate in the modernization. One of the ways that we engage with folks, and please, if anyone wants me to slow down, let me know. I just know that, we're running close to the end. So stakeholder interviews, really important. One of the first things that we do, they're these one-on-one conversations that help bring out the barriers and motivations to the work that we are doing. So some examples of those one-on-one conversations would be someone from my team and your principal, someone from our team and your school psychologist, student leaders, local CBOs, so that we're really getting intimate feedback on what is needed. And these conversations really inform the rest of our work. Another element is community listening sessions. So we want to emphasize that in addition to these CPC sessions that we've got all of you gathered, we're intentionally connecting with marginalized communities, historically marginalized communities. And our findings will be centered and co-created by those communities, by those conversations that we have. So a listening session is essentially, it's a facilitated conversation where we come prepared with a bunch of questions and then get all of the answers in order to collect information about folks' experiences and what they need. Some examples of listening sessions that we're hoping to do could be language-specific listening sessions, sessions with the Latina and Black or African American student unions and groups, and other students and families of colors are definitely going to be high priority to make sure that no one's feeling left out in our conversations. With these listening sessions, we also use a equity lens, and so a few of those points is that we center the experiences of folks who have been left out or underserved, not being a part of the decision-making process. We want to lead with a strengths-based and trauma-informed approaches, so really empowering the folks that we are talking to instead of just getting the information from them. And we want to build and maintain reciprocal relationships with community folks. So everything that we learn in our conversations does get fed back into that feedback loop. So I know there was a comment earlier about, hey, you're going to talk to all these groups, that's great, but will any of it be implemented? I can confidently say that the After Bruce team, everything that we hear will be presented in a findings presentation to the design team, to PPS, so the information is definitely flowed through to the groups. Another element of our engagement would be surveys. Not everyone has time to do a 90-minute listening session or a one-on-one stakeholder interview. We also don't have the time to engage with everyone on those intimate levels. So with the information that we know is most prioritized, we formulate a survey and we can spread that far and wide to community members near and far. I'll also note that with the surveys, we can also transcreate upon need, and essentially that's translation, but we use a native speaker of that other language to read our English copy, rephrase it, and make it culturally relevant to those other groups. So that's another element of the work that we will be able to do. And then briefly, we also are planning on making a DIY engagement guide. So that's something that we want to form some materials so that peer-to-peer student groups are able to have these conversations instead of, some firm that's just been hired and coming in and talking to them, talking to each other and really kind of lowering the walls of conversation so they feel more comfortable. And then the last little bit that you get to hear from me is about office hours. These are educational opportunities, so it's more of like opening up to the local community. You have questions about what's going on? Come, join this open office hour and we can answer your questions and give you kind of an update on what's going on. And that's all I got for you.
Woo!
Back to you.
Record time. All right, we're just about at, we are at the end of our time. Next steps for this group. We have a community workshop next Sunday after next, on Sunday the 17th from 1 to 3. Like last time, we're gonna go through much of the same kind of information in terms of design schemes and orientation and get feedback. But just as Rhonda was saying, we really want to make sure that we are getting feedback from a really wide, broad group of people so that we're not in our own echo chambers. So invite people to come, bring your friends and family, really encourage people. It's also, it's kind of tough. We're getting close to the holidays. There's a lot going on. so we hope that people are able to make it. After the new year, our next CPC meeting is going to be Tuesday, January 16th, 2024. Kind of excited to say that, 6 to 8 p.m. When we come back to you, we will have tried to refine these design options with all of this input. We'll refine the guiding principles, and for the first time, we'll be able to talk maybe about a rough order magnitude of costs, and to be able to see, you know, where the costs are different. But keep in mind, this is at a super high level. We don't have a design for a building, so it's kind of like a rough order magnitude plus or minus some stuff. We'll also synthesize everything that we've heard today and get it posted to the website. In case you missed it, the notes from our last CPC2 meeting are posted to the PPS Bond website. If there's anything that you think we're missing, please make sure to let us know. And if you didn't get the bond email that had the guiding principles in it, if you could please come up and see me or Donna afterward, we'll just make sure that we get you on the list. Okay, that was our spiel. So questions?
Just real quickly, I was looking for a public-facing website for this next community workshop to share it among my community. I couldn't find it. Is there any way you can send us a link to it?
A public-facing workshop. You mean just?
Like is there like a URL to a website that shows like when, where, you know?
Oh, for a community workshop and announcement. Maybe we just need to make sure it's posted on the website.
It should be on the bond website.
It should be on the bond website, on the IWL's website.
Okay, I'll try to find it.
In fact,
But if you give me your email, I'll try to make sure that I can point you to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is the community workshop here?
It's here, but down in the
cafeteria.
And there will be food. So it's from 1 to 3, but there will be food starting at 12:30. And last time we were here, it was really good Lebanese food. Oh. I really should not have had, from Barbara Foods. Oh, it was so good.
It will be the same food this time.
Definitely come.
So come.
Again, if you've got some more questions, if you want to add a post-it note to the boards, if you just want to come up and talk to us, we are available to stay for a little while longer. And just we really appreciate you all being here and spending your time with us. We know that you have daily lives and day jobs, and thank you for your time.